Being in a romantic relationship is not a necessity, especially if the timing is wrong. I'm Fiona Harewood, author, speaker, and life coach. It's week 2 of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and so far, I've given you 3 tips that can help you avoid toxic people and unhealthy relationships. We explored loving yourself, knowing your self-worth, and commanding respect. I mentioned in the last video that this week we will consider the perspective that being in a relationship or a romantic relationship is not a necessity, as well as points to ponder when selecting the right person. However, I have decided that chronologically, it would be more appropriate to discuss selecting the right person as the final principle. So this week, I'm positing to you that being in a relationship is not a necessity, and I'll be describing some of the red flags that you should be aware of in conversation and before a first date. Let's look at principle number 4. Be aware that being in a romantic relationship is not a necessity. I teach from my personal experiences, research, and faith. In researching how to avoid unhealthy relationships, I interviewed young people and parents. My question to the young adults was, what would you or your friends like to know so you can avoid toxic relationships? While you will hear one parent's responses next week, a wise young woman made this point. She said that at a very early age, young people are taught that they should marry and start families. Hence, many of them tend to center most of their attention on being in romantic relationships. She wants you to know that being in a romantic relationship is not a necessity, especially if the timing is wrong. I thanked her for her contribution, realizing she couldn't be more on target. Nadine Ramirez, while a student at Florida International University, she wrote an article titled, "Why Love Should Not Be a Necessity." It was published in the Odyssey Online. She said that we are already exceptional on our own and should stop embracing the superficial idea that our purpose in life is to find our true love. Instead, she continued, we should strive to excel in what we do, to follow our passions, to travel, and to enrich ourselves with culture. These are things that can make us whole by filling us with knowledge, by enriching us in a manner in which we are able to truly empathize with other cultures. Yet, amongst these things, we may find love. However, what we must realize first is that love is not a necessity, at least not romantic love. Well, unfortunately, I was one of those women who felt I needed a man in my life to make me whole, to complete me. As a result, I fell for some unsuitable partners and landed in a world of trouble. One of those guys I met was the biggest actor. He was married but swore that he and his wife lived separate lives and that they shared the same home because of their children. Yes, I was naive enough to fall for that line. At first, he played the role well. Actors in relationships, remember? The relationship was great, but short-lived because a few months later, he abruptly and unceremoniously dumped me, justifying his actions by claiming that he and his wife agreed to enter marriage counseling to fix their relationship. Anybody been there? You don't want to experience that kind of pain. Steer clear. I remember those 3 words so well. Unethical, immoral, and unlawful. On the day he ditched me, he and his wife had already visited the counselor, who told them that until they met with her in 6 weeks, Neither of them should do anything unethical, immoral, or unlawful, or it would jeopardize their marriage. The next time I saw him, he was handcuffed to a hospital bed guarded by 2 police officers. The news reported that he had shot his wife. She was in critical condition for a while, but thankfully didn't die. He was in police custody until it was clear that she would survive. When he was released on bail, ignoring the fact that he had dumped me just a few weeks earlier, he waltzed right back into my life, fully expecting that I would be his woman. The question is normally asked, why don't people just leave toxic relationships? In retrospect, the 3 years that ensued reminded me that it is hard for people to leave unhealthy relationships, despite the fact they know that's what they should do. These are complicated situations. I am grateful now for what appeared to be a curse then. After using me to be back on his feet and regain entry into society, he discourteously discarded me, leaving me used, abused, and broken. I share that experience to let you know that some of these actors can be heartless and they have ulterior motives. If you hook up with them, you could wind up in a worse situation than I did. You could die. You don't need these losers, whether you're a man or a woman, especially if you have a job that allows you to take care of your basic needs. When you love yourself, you recognize that being in a romantic relationship is not a necessity. Principle number 5, look for red flags in conversation and before the first date. This is another strategy for learning more details about people. Listen, observe, and ask questions of folks as they speak. Answers to probing questions will help you learn more about others. You may even notice some red flags, which could be saying either proceed with caution or stop. Stephen Speaks tells us in his YouTube video, Red Flags in Dating, that red flags don't always mean wrong person. They could mean wrong time or there are issues that need to be addressed. I will list 4 of Julia Pogachovsky's tips in her article, 7 Red Flags Before the First Date. 1. Dry conversation. She said, beware if your questions are met with one-word responses and the questions posed to you are very generic, such as, what do you do for fun? Dr. Wendy L. Patrick, author of Red Flags, Frenemies, Underminers, and Ruthless People, said, stilted, vague answers to your questions coupled with disinterest in getting to know you is time wasted at best, not to mention predicting a boring date. 2. Nailing down a location and time is already work. You've been chatting with this person for a while, but planning a date is proven to be challenging because they don't know when they will be free, or they take forever to respond to a proposed date or time. Dr. Patrick said, significant delay in responding signals the kind of foot dragging that might very well predict their approach to dating and possibly life. Either their schedule is packed or their issue is not free time but freedom, which is inconsistent with devoting time to a relationship. If you want someone who is reliable and who will be there for you, then you may be better off ruling this person out. 3. Their messages are already too sexual. Pre-date flirting should always be respectful, advised Dr. Patrick. It does not assume the date will yield anything other than great conversation. 4. You Google them and their past posts are questionable. It is absolutely fair to change your mind about wanting to go out with someone who posts distasteful off-color content for the world to see, says Dr. Patrick. Consider yourself lucky that you saw it before you wasted your time with someone who would not be a good fit. Other red flags include they are late and don't offer an excuse or explanation. Their behavior suggests a control issue, for instance, insisting that they order your meal. They're rude to the waitstaff. They're aggressively romantic. The date moves too fast. They bring up their ex most of the time. So, be sure to look for these red flags. Remember, the false ones are actors, so for the most part, they're easy to catch when you are looking. There you have it, 5 of our 10 principles that will help you to avoid toxic people and unhealthy relationships. Be aware that being in a romantic relationship is not a necessity. Look for the red flags in conversation and before the first date. Know your self-worth, command respect, and love yourself. In the next video of this series, we will be looking at another 2 of the 10 principles for avoiding toxic people and unhealthy relationships. Principle number 6, go with your gut. And principle number 7, premarital counseling is best prior to finding a partner. In wrapping up, remember our scriptural theme, Philippians 4:8. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. And I also want to say thank you for your subscriptions, comments, and views on my previous videos. You're welcomed to do the same with this video. Until next time.